we do is we start to act from what I call the shoulds instead of the true desire. So we look around and we see people who are doing all of the things that we should do, that we've been told to do. And obviously, because we live in this crazy world now of social media where we're seeing the inside of people's lives all the time, all of a sudden we forget what we want. We forget what's important to us, and we start to live our lives according to what's important to other people.
Welcome to the Mindful and Driven podcast, where we help you to not lose sight of what's really important whilst chasing your dreams. Today's guest is Emma Wilson. She's known as a Turning 30 coach. After suffering a little existential crisis when she was turning 30 herself, what she realised is that there's so much pressure that comes with this age, and she wants to help other people who are stuck to go to being fulfilled and living happy lives, and being secure in themselves and happy with what they've achieved and who they are. Now, as this video comes out, I've just turned 30 myself, so I can completely relate to what she's been talking about. I think you'll find a lot of value in this episode, and I hope you enjoy listening. Welcome to Mindful and Driven. It's great to have you here, Emma.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So how I actually found out about you is because one of my good friends is one of your clients. So she took coaching from you last year, and we chatted about that before the call started. So we're not going to mention her name, but she said she got so much value from you because she was turning 30 and there was a lot of thoughts going down in her brain that she was struggling with. And I know that you challenge a lot of the common ideas that people have in their brains, which aren't necessarily helpful. Can you tell me some common advice that you disagree with?
Okay, so I'm not sure if it's advice, but it's more like a perception that is given to us from a young age, often through advice, through our parents, through society, through our teachers. And it's this preconception that our success in life is bought through hitting timelines and ticking boxes. And I was trying to think of how to actually summarize what I think the underlying belief that we're told. And I think it's something to do with the correlation between success or feeling of happiness coming with age as well. So we have, and obviously that very much links to what I do in my business. I'm a life coach that specializes in helping people who are turning 30. I think that we have this belief that by a certain age, we should be successful. And that success is driven by the boxes that we are ticking, such as the most common ones that I see are that by 30 years old, we should have a successful career. That will include both financial security and also job progression. And it should be our passion, our one passion that we've been trying to do our whole lives and finding that thing. And the other things are that by 30, we should be not only in a relationship, but potentially engaged or even married, if that's what the benchmark of success is for an individual. When it comes to relationships, maybe children is another one, I think. A mortgage, so owning property. What I'm really trying to say is that we are given this preconception that our internal state is going to be good and we're going to feel better and if we're successful in hitting these milestones.
I completely agree because I'm going through the exact same thing at the moment. So as the time of the recording, I'm turning 30 next month. And in many ways, I've got several of the boxes ticked. So I had a corporate career and I've now quit that and gone into doing my own thing. But at the same time, I'm not married yet. And that's kind of something playing in my mind a little bit of that. I think especially because how we grew up, the timelines were generally earlier for a lot of people in previous generations because life is very different then. And now that we're kind of brought up on that diet of information and the TV shows where people are getting married at this age or that age, but generally the whole society has shifted a bit later. People are more focused on their careers, people have got more other options, people can travel, whereas before you didn't have so many options. And that was one of the things that you kind of ticked off the boxes as you went along. And I'm trying to think through it now where I know it's completely irrational to put the date of the 30th year. It's just the 30th time we've gone around the sun. It doesn't actually mean anything at all. But we still measure life in that way for some reason. What does it actually matter if it's 30 times around the sun or 32 years around the sun or 33? And it's difficult because it's just the way we perceive time, I think, is useful in some ways, but in other ways it's really harmful because, like you said, we put these timelines on things which are just completely arbitrary.
100%. And I wanted to pick up on what you actually said before about how our generation and the generations below us are doing things at a different pace. We are having more career changes. Society has changed compared to what it used to be. So people are having children later or getting married later or even not getting married at all. And I think that for us, it's becoming more acceptable. But we have to remember that specifically people who are of our age, of our, let's call us millennials, we've been brought up by our parents and by our teachers and by people who are very much not in that mindset. And it's the reason why I think millennials suffer so much from this feeling of being left behind and this feeling of being, not doing things at a certain time. And I truly believe that it won't be like this forever, because I think that we're going to go ahead and create the change for the next generation. But we have to remember that we've been signaled, and you mentioned also in popular culture, for sure, TV shows, movies, everything that we've been exposed to, that by 30 things should be a certain way. And it's so arbitrary, like it really, really is. And I know that it's arbitrary as well because I have clients who feel left behind because they're turning 30 and they haven't done the things. And I also have clients who have done the things, who are in their 30s, who also don't feel happy. So I think it's just really reminding yourself, if you do feel left behind and that you haven't done the thing yet, that thing isn't going to be the thing that brings you the happiness. It won't. It's just an external goal. And the happiness will be brought from inside, from your mindset and from, your thoughts and how you feel.
And what I'm interested in, because you've obviously spent so long in the last few years focusing on this problem that so many people face, did you struggle yourself in the past with when you turned 30 and the mindsets you had to change in order to kind of accept yourself and accept that where you are is okay?
Yes, exactly. The reason I even chose this niche in the first place is because I had a very interesting journey of turning 30. And I'll go back to the fact that I've always been somebody who has done the right thing with the corporate job. Went to the good university, got the good grades, became a lawyer. I was living in London, was doing all of the things right. I really thought and saw the path ahead of me. This is what was going to happen. I'll be partner. I'm going to go and live in the suburbs in London and marry somebody. And it was all very set out. And I should probably mention here my own cultural and religious background is that I'm Jewish, secular Jewish, but from a very close-knit Jewish community where the timelines and the milestones are even younger than 30. To be single at 30 is even more, oh my God, it's more dramatic than it is, I think, for others. I quit law when I was 27. I moved country. I didn't know what I wanted to do in my career. I did so many different jobs. I had long-term relationships that didn't work out. And I was lost. And when I was turning 29, that was when actually I say my turning 30 journey started. I knew that I wasn't achieving my potential at that point. And I knew because I didn't feel happy. I had all of the things. I had quite a good job. I was working in corporate events. On the outside, it looked great. I was traveling all over the world. I was running a team. I had a nice group of friends. I liked my lifestyle, but it just didn't feel fulfilled. It didn't feel right. I was really struggling at that time to balance lots of different things that were going on in my life. And on my 29th birthday, I got sick straight after for a couple of weeks. And when I got better, I just was like, enough is enough. I'm 30 next year. This doesn't feel right. It's not a disaster. It's not one of those coaching stories that's like, oh, you go to the bottom of rock bottom and then that's it. It wasn't like that. It was just like something doesn't feel aligned. Something doesn't feel amazing. So I'm going to really, I'm meant for more. And that was when I started to do coaching. I went and found a life coach. I discovered this whole world. I also started therapy. I just started to ask myself these really big questions like, okay, how do I want my next decade to look? When I turn 30, how do I want it to feel? And it was very different from what I was feeling then. And that was an amazing platform. And I'm really happy that happened in my year from turning 29 to 30 was a very, very meaningful year for me. And I ended up then quitting the good job that I was in, and starting doing coaching courses and going on a whole other journey. Now the journey is continuous, right? I'm 34, 35 in a few months, and I'm still learning about myself and I'm still having ups and downs, but I definitely had a very meaningful turning 30 experience that eventually has led me to working specifically with this audience.
Yeah, I'm just smiling as long as you say that because I relate to so much what you say. And you mentioned about the secular Jew community. I think I'm from the Punjabi community, and it's very similar because my grandparents got married when they were 18. So for them, even 25 is really late, for example. And the other thing you mentioned there about there not being that particular one moment where everything was terrible. And I think we see that a lot in media and people's stories where they hit the rock bottom and that's the only way you can build up. And I think some even previous guests have said it. They said, you need to hit rock bottom and then you can come up again. Which I disagree with completely, because you don't need to hit rock bottom. Sometimes it's like I said, it's things look good, they're not bad, but there's just that void inside. There's just something not quite right. And in some ways, I think that's really hard to deal with, because if you hit rock bottom, then the only way is up. Whereas when you're well, some things are already good. Why am I not happy? Why am I not fulfilled? You almost feel guilty as well. I think there's a guilt that comes with that of, I should be more appreciative of what I have.
Yeah, I think you really picked up on something so important there, which is that when you don't go to rock bottom and you're just living, but it doesn't feel aligned in some way, you don't feel fulfilled, you want to make a change, but like you said, maybe you're doing all the things, all the self-help things that you've seen online, and you're journaling, and you're maybe signing up to some courses and doing all of those things. Because you've not had an extreme change of circumstances and it's just life going along, you feel that guilt. And I think it comes as well from privilege. And I have this a lot with clients, is that, me and you were perfect examples of this. We're privileged people who had good corporate jobs, who living life, according to a lifestyle. And it feels wrong in a way to say, oh, I don't feel good. So people don't say it. They're almost too embarrassed or too ashamed to say this life that I've been living up until now doesn't feel right. Because what does it mean about me that it doesn't feel right? And that's what I really aim to do with my coaching. And when I'm speaking to potential new clients in my content, is to help you realize that you don't have to hit rock bottom to want to make a change. You can just want to set new goals and build a new chapter. And it's okay. I always say that as well about my journey. I'm like, it was a mediocre journey. I've had rock bottoms and big things in relationships that have changed. And don't get me wrong, I have had those times, but my turning 30 journey was just a story of a mediocre girl who, was not living fully to the extent that she could live. And I think for anybody listening, if you feel that weird guilt that we're talking about of feeling uncomfortable saying that you're not happy, I give you permission to say that it's okay to want more, because it is okay.
And I think so much of it comes from understanding yourself rather than what everybody else is saying and trying to follow what other people are doing. Because I think that happens a lot, is people will see, well, other people are happy doing this, then I should be happy doing this. But that's not necessarily the case. You've got to work out, well, maybe the corporate job isn't what makes me happy. Maybe I see it as well with travel. A lot of people will travel as a way to kind of fill this gap they have. And I used to do it, right? I've been to 50 odd countries. But a lot of those countries, I was going there because I needed something to try and pick me up. I wasn't going there for the enjoyment or because of that good experience. It was I needed it. I needed something to look forward to. And I think when you have that need, it kind of poisons it a little bit, because you shouldn't have to go to another country in order to be happy. You shouldn't need to travel. It should be something that you do as part of a more holistic life. And I always think about it now is that I still like to travel, but I don't need to escape my life. And it's trying to build in that daily routines and those kind of, what's the normal standard that you're okay and you're happy.
What we do is we start to act from what I call the shoulds instead of the true desire. So we look around and we see people who are doing all of the things that we should do, that we've been told to do. And obviously, because we live in this crazy world now of social media where we're seeing the inside of people's lives all the time, every every minute of every day almost that we're engaging with others on social media, all of a sudden we forget what we want. We forget what's important to us, and we start to live our lives according to what's important to other people. So we see somebody else getting the keys to their new house, that they've just bought a property, and maybe you've never even thought about owning a property before. It's just not something that has been relevant for you. And all of a sudden you're like, I should own a property. I'm 32 next year. I should own a property. And it's really understanding the shoulds versus the wants. Do you really want to? What does it mean for you to own that property? Or is it just something that you think you should do because somebody else is doing it? Or maybe in what we were talking about before, because your family are telling you to do it, or your community is, signaling you. So it's really important, and something I do with a lot of my clients is to get clear on the shoulds and the wants. And a way that we do that as well is really understanding your values, like what's important to you, what do you value? So just like you were saying about the travel thing, it's like maybe for some people, travel is a core value. Adventure, exploration, curiosity, that's something that somebody really values. So they should incorporate that into their life. But for another person, maybe that's just something they think they should do because they see other people doing it around them. But actually, they really value security and stability and a feeling of a sense of family or whatever that other values can be in relation to that. So I think it's really important to get clear on what you want, what your values are, who you really are. And then from there, you should decide what to do.
Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I want to take a quick break to ask you to check in on yourself. There's many people struggling with balance, and there's nothing to be ashamed about. The tips that my guests and I share can hopefully help you along the way. But if you already feel overwhelmed or burnt out, it's probably best that you ask somebody for help too. For some, this might be a friend or family member, but others might feel like they have nobody they can talk to. If you're one of these people, check out the link in the show notes. It's for United for Global Mental Health. They've got helplines all across the world with people willing to listen on the other side. It's important to let somebody know how you're feeling. Now, back to the show. I know at the moment you do a kind of digital nomad lifestyle that you said you hate the word. And this is something which I think people have kind of pressured me into doing. They say, well, you can do what you want now. Why don't you travel the world? And it's like, because I'd be doing that because people are telling me to do it, because it looks cool, because that would be good for my Instagram. Whereas what I actually value is like, I've got a great set of friends around me. I've got people I care about in this country, and I can see them and I can interact with them. Like, I love London as a city. And I'd rather, when I go abroad, to completely switch off, because I think if I go abroad and I'm working, to me, that's not how I would enjoy it, like traveling.
I just want to say, we're not all robots. So there's just no possible way that every single person on the planet who is our age, who is going from their late 20s to their early 30s, likes the same thing. And that's what we have to understand. And sometimes we're living a life that isn't in alignment with our values, and that's when we feel not fulfilled, and that's when we need to do the work. But sometimes, and I think what you're saying is amazing, is that you've acknowledged your value of your friendships and loving London and the fact that you feel so at home there, and that you're living according to actually what you want, and you're not being that robot that's looking at everyone else. Because if we were all robots, how boring would life be? We would all be doing exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. We would all be doing, 30 would look the same for everybody. And it's really important to remember that we're not all robots. And about being I said before, the term digital nomad, I don't love it, but I'll use it anyway. Say a remote worker. For me, I do it in a way that combines this, what you're talking about, that feeling of stability and having a base, and then going away. So if you're officially a digital nomad, often you put your things in storage and you just go. I have friends who they just live all over the world. They don't really have residency anywhere. And that's it. They just can spend months at a time in one place, maybe years at a time, but they don't really see themselves having a base. Now, for me, I couldn't do that. It doesn't work. I need to have both. I need to have the freedom and also the stability. So I've been working fully remotely for 18 months now. And I've really tried to combine both of them, because it's not all like it seems on Instagram. And I actually really tried to be honest on my Instagram when I was away last winter in Central America. I was really authentic and honest, telling people about the experience, because it's sometimes really hard. Like, running a business in general is really hard. Running it when you have to move around all the time. And I would be really authentic and honest about the fact that being a remote worker, is really hard sometimes. And sometimes you find yourself in a new place and you don't speak the language and the internet's cutting out and you don't know who to ask for help. And it's really daunting. And it's just about doing it in a way that feels good for you. So I also really understood that I didn't want to move around a lot and ended up finding a house with two friends that I met and living there for 2 months. So it was almost like creating a home away from home. So for anyone listening who does want to travel and look at that lifestyle, just to let you know that you can just set that up in whatever way you want, and you can just trial and test and see what works for you. Because I learned so much about doing it, and it definitely, I'm making mistakes as I go along with the whole digital nomad thing and just learning after that what works and what doesn't work.
You mentioned Instagram there, and I want to bring up a post you made on, I think it was New Year's Day or New Year's Eve, where you talked about how people set themselves targets for the year. And I've experienced myself. I saw so many people posting on Instagram and saying, like, here's what I achieved this year, and listing out all of these different things. Now, honestly, like last year was pretty good for me. I quit my job. I've created 2 podcasts. I've done all these different things. But at the same time, that's what makes me happy. And it's what I've been doing, chasing my own like ambitions and things I'm enjoying. And what I didn't want to do is then post that on social media and make other people feel lesser, because they might be completely happy in their 9-to-5 job. And if they're happy, then they don't need to see me being like, oh, I've done this and that and this and that. Like, I'm so happy that I've left my job, because you can never be happy if you've got a job. And I think it's quite important as well for many people in this space, where just because freedom suits us and we can do our own thing and we enjoy that, many people don't. And that's okay. Like, I never want to feel somebody who's listening today who is happy at their job to feel like they need to quit to keep up with us or to keep up with people who are doing that.
I definitely went through what you are talking about, what you're going through with maybe not showing up and speaking about your own personal journeys and successes, because I did worry that it would trigger some other people, and then therefore maybe they would think I was hyping myself up, or maybe they would think that I was being patronizing or saying that this is the only way. And I think that obviously you're someone with a high level of self-awareness that you would think about that before posting. But actually, I really reframed that and decided that for me, it was really important that the people out there who aren't ticking those boxes that society sets, i.e. the marriage, mortgage, babies, boxes, that they see that there's another way to be successful, that they see that there's another way that you can live your 30s that doesn't mean this cookie cutter way of doing all of the things in order. Because unfortunately on Instagram, especially around the holiday times, people are posting all those photos and they are showing up in a certain way that can be quite triggering. And I think I reframed it to be, if it can come from a place of authenticity and not patronizing and not my way is the only way, but it can come from a, look, this is what makes me happy. This is actually what works for me. By doing that and speaking up more, since I started doing that a few years ago, that's when my community started building. I think that's really the core of building a community, is you find your people.
Yeah, and I think that's really mature as well, because so many people think their way is the only way. And like you said, it's different things suit different people. And also it's the inspirational versus arrogance argument, isn't it? And I think I worry about it, and it kind of implies that you do as well there. And I think just the fact that you worry about it probably means you're on the right side of it. And that's just the way I think we need to go through life, right? Is that we help the people we can, but we don't look down on the people who are taking a different path. So with this new lifestyle you built, and you said it was difficult when you were traveling around, is there anything you're struggling with right now with your balance?
A lot. I think it's funny because when you're a life coach and you have all these clients, they can idealize you and think that you are this like perfect person who has everything in place. And especially if you're a life coach, you have this perfect morning routine and everything's all like fine and dandy. And it's just not the case for me right now anyway. Balance is definitely something I'm planning and working on a lot more this year. I had a really crazy 2020 and 2021 business-wise, and really have launched a lot of different things. And I've got a new course that just launched this week and a group program that's going, and I also one-on-one coach, and I have my podcast, and I have my Instagram where I show up every day, and my business is really thriving, and I'm so lucky and so grateful. But comes with that is this lack of balance. And it's hard because I don't even want to call it work-life balance, because because I love my job, and because, as cheesy as it sounds, as a life coach, a lot of your job is just living. You know, I sometimes find it hard to find that line between when my business stops and when my life starts. And I'm struggling right now to give time to the things that aren't business and more personal things. I think that my upcoming trip to Central America will help that a lot, because I'm going to be living a bit more aligned. When I go there, I'm not a fan of the winter and it's quite cold at the moment. So I feel like give me some sun and I'll definitely be able to feel a little bit more balanced. But it's, for me, the struggle is running a business that is growing quite fast and actually still doing that and being able to have a life outside of it.
I've got the exact same thing where earlier on, I think when I first quit my job and I first did this full time, I had that balance because the opportunities were there, but they weren't overwhelming. Whereas now, as things are going well, it's almost a victim of success in a way, right? And the better you do, the more incoming messages you have, the more things you need to deal with. And it becomes quite hard to keep up with that. And I know exactly what you mean there, where a lot of my content is about how to avoid burnout and how to not work too hard. But I find myself doing it myself, like doing all the things I say that people shouldn't do. I'm sometimes doing myself. And I think one of the really useful things is to have an outside perspective of somebody to keep me accountable. And sometimes my family do this, like, you always talk about that, but you're doing it. It's like, yeah, you've got me there. And just having someone point that out to you is sometimes really useful, because you can make excuses, right? It's like, oh yeah, other people should do that, but I can handle it. And it's rarely true. Usually the rules are the same. Like, you can't handle things that you're telling other people not to handle. Like, and adjusting to that and being honest with yourself as well, because there's always that bit of denial, isn't there? And being able to admit openly, like, yes, there are problems, there are things I need to work out, I think is the first step to fixing that.
Yeah, it's the first step to anything is obviously awareness and being able to understand how you're acting. Again, going back to that point that just because we give advice doesn't always mean that we take it ourselves. So it's being an awareness that that's happening, but also accepting that it's okay. And I like what you just said about accountability. You mentioned family being holding you accountable. That's amazing. I think also having other colleagues who may be other entrepreneurs really important, and having that community, and also having a coach. You know, it's been amazing for me to help grow my business, and something I worked a lot with in 2021 with my business coach was this. It's this concept of balance and understanding, because, you know, at the end of the day, working too much is just the symptom. It's not the cause. The cause is coming from some limiting belief about how much I need to work in order to sustain the business. It's coming from mindset. So often we try to solve things by making more pretty to-do lists or buying more pretty calendars, or, you know, doing all of those things that we should do, airplane moding our phones, all these things that are great pieces of advice, but actually it's coming from some deep-seated belief that if you don't work X amount of hours per day or per week, then actually you won't see the same amount of success in your business, which is another outdated piece of advice that we've been given, going back to the first question. And I think it's really important that if you do struggle with something like balance, that you look at those beliefs and ask why, like where is it coming from?
I think I saw this on probably your Instagram account a little while ago, is that you're looking to hire somebody to come on board part-time to help you out with a lot of stuff. And I'm doing the same for myself at the moment, so starting up in the next couple of weeks. And I think it's one of those things, especially for people who are doing their own thing or entrepreneurs, is letting go of some of these tasks, because we have the way that we want things to be done, but it doesn't make sense for us to do them a lot of the time. And it's that control element of, we want things to be in our control, but that often means that we're working too much or burning out. So instead of focusing on the bits that really fill us up with joy and really make us happy, we're sitting there doing admin or doing the taxes or whatever like that, which that's not why I quit my job, is just sit there and do admin for how many hours a week. What was behind the decision for you?
Wow. This is such a personal challenge for me, what you just said. And you're right. I have just hired someone, actually starting with her this week. And it's been a huge, big step for me, not even just practically speaking, but mindset speaking, because of this one word that's very emotive for me, and it has always been, is delegation. Because delegation is, for me, very uncomfortable because it's all about control and trust. And I resonate with everything you said. I think it's just really, really true. I think a lot of us do have this thing of, if I just do it myself, like what's the saying again? It's like better if I just do it myself. There's no point. We have these beliefs in our head, like by the time I've told somebody else how to do it, I could have just done it better myself. And it's hard to let go of that control and to actually give it to someone else and delegate to somebody else. But it's so necessary and it's so essential. And it's funny because I've been meaning to hire somebody for months and months and months, and it's just been sitting on the to-do list to do it. And I've pretty much been running the business. I do outsource. So I have, a podcast editor, and I have somebody who helps me with my Facebook ads. And I do have a team. I have someone who does my website. Like, I have a team of amazing entrepreneurs who are helping me, but I've not really brought somebody on board into turning 30 into the brand. And I was coaching my group. I have a group program called Reclaim. And one of the women in the group came to me with an issue that her business couldn't grow and it couldn't move forward because she needs help, but she couldn't let go. And I did this really powerful coaching with her, and it literally pressed stop on the Zoom meeting. And I was like, okay, Emma, you need to take your own advice. You need to hire somebody. And it was literally the next day I went on my Instagram and I shared the post and I hired somebody that week. So I am learning, and it's an ongoing process. I think it's going to be a huge step for creating balance in my life and in my business. I'm really excited about it. And actually, the minute that I decided, it was like a huge weight off my chest. Maybe you're struggling with this as well, but there's that weird like buffer period where when you hire somebody, you have to train them. So you have to actually work even harder to give more time. And then obviously you'll make that back in the future. So I'm going through that right now. And I think it's just such a lesson in so many different things. But the truth is that if you are an entrepreneur and you want your business to grow, you have to understand that you can't do it all alone. And especially as a coach, there's only one of me. So I'm the one who has to run all the actual coaching sessions. So I can't delegate that to somebody else. So like you said, the admin and everything surrounding it can absolutely be done by somebody else.
Is there any other changes you're going to make in the future, you think, in terms of balance? You said you're going to Costa Rica and you've got a new assistant. Are there any other changes you want to make?
This is the first time actually that I've launched something that's passive income. So everything I've been doing has been active income up until now. And now on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, I launched my new course, The Next Chapter. And it is a course that you can sign up to and everything's pre-recorded. There is a live aspect to it where you can actually come in. There's a Facebook community and I'm going live in the community doing live coaching, but a majority of it is passive. And that I think will also make a difference because it will take less actual, say, frontal hours I have to be on screen and coaching. So I'm excited about it. And I think that because I've actively set it as an intention for the year, there's going to be a lot of things. And I'm sure there's also things that I'm going to do for balance that I haven't discovered yet that I will.
Well, that sounds great. Like, it seems like you've got the right ideas now. And I think that experimentation phase is so important because sometimes if you set something rigidly right from the very start, you don't give yourself that flexibility to say, well, actually, this is working or this is more engaging for me. So I'm going to do more of that. What's like one mindset shift you think people listening today can make that would make a positive difference to their lives?
I think a mindset shift that's really fundamental for anybody who wants to do the work and who wants to show up differently in their lives to build something differently in the future, whether that's career, relationship, or just a different internal world, is just the mindset that you can, the mindset that it is possible to change what you think. Because if you believe that truly, if you truly believe that you can change your thoughts and therefore you can change your results, then you can change any mindset. You can believe anything. So I think it's really important. And I think a lot of people are cynical or have got to a point in their lives when they just think that's just what there is.
I completely agree because nobody on earth is condemned to be sad or to be unhappy. There's always something that can be done, whether it's through something that they're shifting in themselves, or whether it's through getting coaching or getting like professional help through therapy or something like that. There's always something that can be done, and that it's really important, I think, to have that belief in life, to kind of keep yourself having that hope. So it's been a pleasure to talk to you today, Emma. Where can people hear more about you who are listening today?
If you would like to see more about my content and my business and just get to know me a little bit more, the main place to find me is on Instagram. My handle is at turning30coach. The 30 is the numbers. And my inbox is always open there. I have a really active community, so I really recommend checking that out. I also have details of my programs and courses on my website, which is turning30coach.com. And I have a podcast called the Turning 30 Podcast, which is my passion project, I say, because I absolutely love it. I want to say every week, but sometimes it's not every single week, but I try and do a few episodes a month. I have solo episodes and also guest episodes. And yeah, that's another really good place to learn all about what it's like to feel good about turning 30.
And then the final question is, what's one small thing that's brought you joy recently?
It's actually a big thing, but it's small as well, that I learned a new process of manifestation last year, and I used it to manifest my new apartment. And when I say new, I did move here a few months ago, but it was a huge thing for me. I had condemned myself to not living in a nice place after I came out of a serious relationship 18 months ago, and its physical environment is something very important for me. And every single day that I wake up and walk into my living room, I have these amazing like arched windows. They're really incredible, and it looks over onto another building opposite that has these amazing like bright pink flowers, and it looks like a painting. And every single day I wake up, I just feel like a little bit of joy that this is where I get to live. So that's what I would say, something that brings me joy all the time.
If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, I'd love it if you could leave me a 5-star review. It really helps to get the message out further. Wherever you're listening, it would be awesome if you could subscribe and to share on your social media channels. If you want to see more of my work and advice, you can find all of the links in the show notes. Thank you again for listening, and I hope you have a lovely day.